Right now, switch your family to T-Mobile and get 4 lines for $25 a line with AutoPay and 5G access included on America's largest 5G network. So don't wait. Get unlimited and nationwide 5G access for the whole family for just $25 a line. Visit a T-Mobile store or T-Mobile.com today.
Plus taxes and fees. Customers may notice lower speeds and further reduction if using over 50 gigs a month due to data prioritization. Video at 480p. Unlimited while on our network. Qualifying credit and 4+ lines required. Capable device required for 5G. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain features. See T-Mobile.com.
We are a blended family.
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 We're a blended family.
We are a blended family.
We are a blended family.
We are a blended family.
And we are a blended family. Hi, we're Dr. Larry and Carol Snap. We're glad to have you with us today.
Blended Families, week 7 of 12. This is the first of 3 step parenting chapters. I believe we're going to be doing 8 and 9 next week.
Right.
We're going to kind of scrunch them up just a little bit, so we'll cover both of those just to be able to wrap everything up with everything else that's going on here at the church.
For the Easter thing.
Yeah, for Easter. So this is step parenting skills. It's also the blessings. Like next week, I like to call that the dark side of step parenting, because we get into more of the challenges. And this week, it's more about the blessings of being a step parent. So I always like to start off with some examples of biblical step parents. Many times, especially on Facebook, we see stuff about like blended families aren't biblical, or it's a big negative to be a step parent and stuff like that. It's just, it is not what God intended. But you look through the Old Testament, there was polygamy going on, hundreds of wives for some people. I mean, that's all there was blended families. Halves and steps and all kind of stuff. But it was not exactly what God intended in the beginning. But His grace and His forgiveness of sins covers us in that. And we look at one of the biggest and most famous step parents, and that's Joseph. He was Jesus' stepdad. He didn't have anything biological to do with that. But he was there to help raise him. And we have Mordecai. We look in the book of Esther. Mordecai was actually her uncle, but her parents were killed somehow. And so he kind of stepped in as a stepdad, even though he was actually an uncle. He helped raise her the rest of the way. And another really famous one is Pharaoh's daughter. Back in those days, the Pharaoh had put out an edict that like all the firstborn male babies of the Hebrews would be killed.
Under the age of 2.
Yeah. So Moses' mother put him in a basket and sent him down the river. And Pharaoh's daughter just happened to be out there with some of her maids, and one of them found this basket with a baby in it along the side of the river. And she took him and raised him in the palace as one of her own children. So Jesus had a stepdad, Esther. Her uncle finished raising her when her parents died. Pharaoh's daughter had love, I guess you could say, for this baby that she didn't know where it came from. Turned out to be Moses. Can anybody think of another one anywhere? I mean, these are 3 of the biggest, famous ones, the easy ones. If somebody has another one that they can think of, let me know. But you look at not only even King David and Solomon, they all had multiple children from multiple wives, right? So there was a lot of that, especially in the Old Testament. So for someone to say that blended families, step families, however you want to say it, are not biblical, you just have to look at Jesus, right? But But like I said, it wasn't what God really intended. He wanted one man, one woman, and then those kids to grow up and have their own wives, one wife, right, and all that, and just keep going that way. But
Well, another
we
thing
live in a
that
fallen
happened-
world.
Another thing that happened back then too, Larry, is when these men would go off to fight, and the brothers that had families died. It was in writing that the next brother in line would just come in and finish raising the family.
Right. Yeah, that was a tradition back then.
Yes.
That, you know, if a husband was killed, if he had any brothers, the brother would step up
Right.
and marry the woman, or at least help raise the family and all that stuff. So there's a lot of examples of people stepping up to finish raising someone else's child. And if you look at a blended family, step family, that's really what's going on here. And because we're talking about the blessings, part of the blessing here is when you're giving yourself for someone else, you get blessed.
Right.
Right. So part of the whole step parenting skills is having the right attitude about being a parent. Right? So, this is all about yours, mine, and ours. And we've talked before about the pyramid, which is off camera there. But when we look at the children being gifts from God, and we're the steward of God's children, that kind of changes how we look at things. If we come in as, a previously single parent, that these are my kids, and I'm going to protect my kids no matter what, well, your pyramid's out of order, because the spouse needs to come before the kids, and we've been through all that before. Just for purposes of the class, usually I will distinguish between a mother, father as the biological people, and mom and dad are the ones that actually do the parenting. They can be the same people, but just me, I guess. It was always mom and dad to me. I never said mother, father, but just to kind of distinguish between those two. If we're talking about a mother, we're more than likely talking about the biological person, not necessarily the mom that's raising the kids. Okay, so children are a gift from God, so is your spouse. Right? We got to get that attitude right? It's all about the attitude. How do you see it? We have our Jesus glasses back there. You got to have your Jesus glasses on. Children are a gift from God, so is your spouse. God will want his kids back, but you can keep your spouse.
But Larry, that is not in the Bible. That's your version.
You want me to find it?
Yeah,
I always look in Job.
it's not there.
Because when God allowed Satan to mess with him, he had 10 kids, he had all this property, all these animals, all this livestock. Satan is allowed to come in, he kills all 10 of his kids. He never touched the wife.
Mm-hmm. Didn't have to. She was already.
She was probably too mean.
Yeah, she was. At that time, she was.
But she turned out to be kind of mean. But he restored everything that he had lost.
Yeah.
And double, really. So now he never got 20 more kids, but he got 10 more kids because the first 10 are in heaven, right? They still exist.
Right.
But he kept the same wife. Satan was not allowed to take the wife.
At that time, they didn't recognize divorce.
Well, no. It wasn't part of God's plan.
Right.
That's part of Satan's plan. But God is going to want his kids back. He wants them to choose him on their own because they want to. Not because they have to, but because they want to. But as we have talked about in the pyramid, at some point you go from steward of God's kids to an adult to an adult relationship. All right, so that relationship changes. You have, I think I got that over on that side. But as you're training up your children in the way they should go, and it says, and when they're old, they shall not depart from it. So I guess when they're young, they will. Just kind of an assumption there. It doesn't say that they will, it just says when they're old, they won't. So there's something going on when they're younger. Your job is to train them up in the way they should go and then give them back to God so that they can become godly offspring and answer for themselves. There's that point there where that relationship has to change from actually being a parent where you're trying to raise the kids to where you've done the work. Now you got to turn them loose, kick them out of the nest, see if they're going to fly or not. All right? That's our job. That's what God expects of us. He wants to have mature, independent, godly children so He can guide them and allow them to be dependent on them. Okay, one of those things that always gets people in trouble is different sets of rules for different sets of kids. All right? There should be one set of rules for yours, mine, and ours. It's our house, our rules.
Well, it's age appropriate for those rules, too.
Right. Yeah, you don't have the same kind of rule for a teenager that you would for a 3-year-old. It's got to be appropriate to behavior. So, but this is one of those things where some people really struggle to be able to talk about. They just make assumptions that, well, it's going to be this way or that way. The normals that we've talked about. My normal is my kids will do this. And if you're from a different kind of a normal and you think kids should be treated a different way, now you guys as parents are going to be knocking heads. So this is something you need to sit down, talk about, reach agreement on, and then even better is to write them down and get the kids to sign off on them.
Right.
Whatever those rules are.
And make a copy so they can't say, well, I didn't know that was a rule.
Yeah, put it on the fridge.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, because they're gonna play you.
Yeah, the teenagers especially. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They will test you.
I lived in a house like that for 9 years, my ex-husband. There was 3 different sets of rules. That's how I know those don't work. Except for yours, except for mine, and except for ours. Yeah. It does not work.
No. The kids are going to tell. They're going to know that they're being treated differently based on who they belong to. Right? So it's not going to be fair. There's going to be a lot of animosity and envy and disappointment and all those kind of things. What we've seen over the years is under 12, and I put tend to in quotes just because the tendency is there. It's not a law, right? They tend to blend easier because when they're younger, the tendency is that they want to be part of something. Mm-hmm. Once they get to be 12, 13, they don't want to be part of anything. They want to be independent. Mm-hmm. So now the challenge is, how do you bring them into something they don't want to be a part of, right? So that's where it tends to get messy. But whatever age they are, they're going to test you. They will be tools in the hands of the enemy, just like spouses are sometimes. Your children, especially if it's the other spouse's kids, against you, they will do whatever they can to come between you. And that's why it's so important to reinforce the pyramid again. When you get into the parenting, you really got to get to the pyramid because that's what makes things work. If God's not first and your spouse is not second, the kids will come in between all that. And they will do whatever they can because they'll be the tools in the hands of the enemy to come between you and try to disrupt everything. One of the conferences we had here one of the doctors that was speaking was telling about how he could tell just by looking out a little window in his office, his waiting room, where some of the problems were, just by the way the people were sitting.
Right.
And this one in particular, there were, the mom and the dad and 2 or 3 kids, and this one daughter that was like 13, 14 years old was sitting between mom and dad. Yeah. He could tell just from that she was part of the problem. Right. She was coming between them. And she was the wedge in there. So marriage is spiritual warfare, and your spouse is not your enemy, but they can be a tool. Your children can be a tool. Just don't ever forget that. Because that's when you can recognize when somebody's being used as a tool by the enemy, now you can pray against that, you can rebuke it. You fight in the spirit against that kind of stuff. Because we're not fighting against flesh and blood. It's all about the dark side. So, okay. So, again, we're talking about the blessings here. For the most part, we're going to get into some scriptures that talk about the blessing, and then the legacy, some parental duties, and a few more things. So I'm going to move over there. I'm going to move the camera just a bit.
I was wondering if you might ought to go through the pyramid real quick, Larry.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Sure. That wouldn't be a bad idea. Since we're referencing it quite a bit today. Okay. Now, again, God is first. He's eternal. We need to spend a lot of time with that. That's going to be the one we have forever. Your spouse is supposed to be a covenant till death do us part. Now, we don't promote divorce. We want whatever this marriage is, we want this one to be the one that works. If it's your first one, great. If it's not, make this one work. You can't go back and fix the old one. All right? But you got to get the spouse as the second most important relationship that you have. These are all about relationships. And the priorities that those relationships have in your life. We have the parent-child again. Number 3, we're supposed to be stewards of God's kids. I just threw up here 18 to 25 years. 18 legally, they're an adult. Some people keep their kids on their insurance till they're 25 or 6 or whatever that is, going to college and all that kind of stuff. So, God's grace. It's not about, you're 18, okay, boom, you're out. Okay. Some people do that. Everybody's on their own there. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. But what we were just talking about is your job is to show your children how to do marriage. That's the purpose of being married, is if you have kids, to show them how to do marriage.
A godly marriage.
God's way, yeah. So you raise them up in the way they should go, and then, like we said, you give them back to God and turn them loose. You're still the parent. You still love them. But now you got to let them make their choices. One of the hardest things there is for a parent to do is let their kid fall on their face. Who likes to see bloody noses? Nobody, right? But this number 3 area, number 3 and number 4, is where most blended families really struggle. Because if you're not disagreeing about how to parent, then the ex is in your business too much. And you're not managing that relationship appropriately. Too many times the new spouse is feeling like they're under a lower priority than the ex. And the ex is fine with that usually. If they can be ahead of the spouse, hey, that's good for me, right? I'm the parent of those kids, so I should have some say, well, yeah, they're a co-parent, but you got to get that marriage up there. And we always talk about doing the And a speakerphone, make sure everything's in writing otherwise, so that there's no room for monkey business. But when you're on the speakerphone, it's both parties, the husband and the spouse, the husband and the wife, because now they can say, how can we help you?
Right, not I anymore.
Yeah, it's not just me, it's not I, it's us. So, God first, marriage second. That parent-child relationship is after the husband-wife relationship. Extended family, which includes exes, siblings, co-workers, all that kind of stuff. That's number 4. Then your job.
Well, number 4, though, what the things are. Seasonal and healthy boundaries.
Some of these kind of relationships, like co-workers and etc., those are for a season.
Right.
Jobs are for a season.
But you have to have set healthy boundaries.
Yeah, especially with exes. Mm-hmm. There needs to be healthy boundaries.
But everybody's got to be in agreement. Your new spouse, it's got to be something you all are on board with, because it is not going to work if that's not the case.
Right. And for those that might be single, one of those issues in this number 4 area is after there's been a divorce, the ones that are still married, the couples, part of your friend circle, the married friends, now you're single, sometimes they will see you as a threat.
Right.
Because you're single.
Yeah.
You know.
Happens a lot.
Happens a lot. Then you got your job, and ministry is number 6 here. Your spouse should be your first ministry. Minister to each other. Mm-hmm. That reinforces the pyramid again. God's first, then your spouse. Right? If you got all this other stuff in order, he says in Timothy, your house has to be in order, then you can minister to other people. But it may work for a little bit, but eventually your ministry is not going to do very well. There won't be any anointing on it or any of that kind of stuff if you're taking care of everybody else before your own family.
And this is a goal. This doesn't happen. The pyramid does not happen overnight.
Oh, no.
It is a goal. It's a goal for married couples.
It's what we're shooting for. Yeah.
Singles. This is the way it should be, because that's the title of it. God's priority pyramid for relationships. It works when you work it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
So don't beat your husband up because it's not being done right away. It's something you got to work towards. And singles don't
wife.
say, well, this is how I want it to be. It's, again, something you got to discuss, and you both got to be in agreement on and move forward with. It's not something that you have to do instantly.
Right. It's,
allow God to work it out.
Back in chapter 3, we're talking about whose normal is normal. Mm-hmm. We all have a normal, but when you get married, now you got to take your normal and their normal and try to create a new Christ-like normal. Right. Something that is more Christ-like than what it was before. Right. That's the goal, right? And when you have a covenant mentality, you're going to, or you look at things as though you're going to be here doing this same stuff with the same person, 20 years from now or more, right? So you don't, it's, we've been married for 2 weeks, now it's not working, let's call it off. Give it time. Allow God to do some things. So I'm just going to go through some of these scriptures. We have a category here I call blessings. One of the first ones is Psalm 127:3. It just says, "Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is His reward." So children are a blessing. God is all about blessing us, and in His kingdom, children are a good thing. The way it's over the generations, sometimes children seem to be more of a pain in the butt. So it's a headache, it's a challenge. You got to deal with these little creatures, right?
Well,
and they're all getting in your way.
Or the new spouse will come in and say, "Well, I can handle the 10-year-old and the 14-year-old, but the 18-year-old, no, I don't want any part of."
Yeah.
Hey, you agreed for the whole package.
Yeah,
you don't pick and choose.
That's something we see quite a bit too. It's like there could be 2 or 3 different kids, Or, well, even a lot of times it's like, when it's just me and the wife, we're great. When the kids are around, we're terrible.
Yeah.
Because now they can't agree on the parenting, right? But
Which is
yeah,
why
sometimes
they should discuss it ahead of time.
one of the, especially if there's like 3 or 4 kids, there's usually one that is just a pain.
Right.
Doesn't want you to get together, doesn't like the other spouse, and does whatever they can to make it hell. Right.
It's their job to try to do that.
And they look at it as their job, right? So, yeah, that's part of the reason that, you know, a second or third or fourth marriage, the more you do it, the worse it tends to be in most cases. It fails quicker and more often each try. It doesn't get better. The odds are against you. So that's why we do this class. If you know better, you can make it work. But most people do the second and third one the same as they did the first one, which wasn't right. So they're still going to do it wrong. Okay, Proverbs 23:24. The father of the righteous shall greatly rejoice, and he that begets a wise child shall have joy of him. So if you train up your child in the Lord, the blessing later is that he will be a righteous child. And he'll do the good things. He'll do good things, which will please you, right? Next week we'll be looking at the dark side. It's just the opposite is true. If you don't do a very good job raising your kid, there'll be a pain later. You'll have to deal with all their crap, right? Proverbs 20:11. Even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. When I was growing up, we didn't really have fences, so you could walk around in other people's yards and stuff. And if they had kids, you just walked over and did stuff. You went and played. But everybody knew whose kids were who. And if somebody was a troublemaker, they knew who it was. Right? That's what that's talking about. Even a child is known by his doing. So if there's one in the neighborhood that's usually the troublemaker, then, you know, everybody knows who it is. And that goes back against the parents. Proverbs 17:6. Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers. So grandkids are like the jewels in the crown of old men, right? And the glory of the children are their fathers. So for the kids, it's when their father has a good name that it's a blessing for them. So, you know, God is all about generations. He wants every generation to be a godly generation. So grandchildren are a blessing for the old men, and the children are blessed when they have a good father.
Join the best positive Christian lifestyle movement on the air at ChristianLivingRadio.com.
Now, getting into the parental duties, that's the teaching, correction, discipline, punishment, and those kind of things. We'll be talking more about that next week. But 22:6 Proverbs, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And like I was just saying, there's a gap in there when there's a good possibility they will be tested. So, but when they get old, they will come back to God and finish things out strong. 22:15, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. We don't have to teach kids how to be bad. That's born into them. That's just part of their nature. We're born with a sinful nature. So nobody has to teach us how to lie. Nobody has to teach us how to do stuff wrong. That's just in us. It's correcting us to get that out of us, to do the right thing. That's the hard part. It says here, the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. It's really tricky to do that these days because the kid will turn around and call CPS on you.
Yeah.
In my day, we had the Board of Education. And it was about that long, and it had holes in it for less wind resistance. Right? 23:13, again, it says, withhold not correction from the child, for if thou, this is tough, if you beat him with the rod, he shall not die. I mean, that's tough, but that's how God wanted us to parent. He kind of does that with us. He doesn't physically beat us, but he lets us go through some pretty strong struggles sometimes just to get us to turn around. God loves us enough to correct us. Amen. And so, in a way, and we see it, there's a lot of kids running around, nobody's doing anything, nobody cares. And that's the point, nobody cares. If you love your kid, you'll want him to do the right thing, right? Especially as Christians.
And we know people that have, and this is before we even got saved ourselves, that they just let the kids do whatever. And, for example, an ex-neighbor we had, and he used to say, well, my son did this, my son did that. Well, we obviously could see that. We live across the street, and we'd see them out there all day and hardly ever going in the house. They just let the kids stay outside, even in 120-degree weather, we're outside. And this is from when they were like 3 years old on up. But when the boy got older, we were still friendly with the husband and the wife, and they would tell us how the son stole like $200 out of my wallet. And we said, well, what did you do? Did you confront him? No, I didn't want to make him mad.
Yeah.
We said, you have to be the parent first, then be the friend.
Yeah,
and ended up that the parent ended up going to jail for something the son talked him into doing. The son got out scot-free, and the dad went to jail for 3.5 years.
Yeah. See, that's...
you have to know the importance of that.
Yeah. And that's the mistake a lot of people make, is they want to be their kid's friend.
Right.
Like you said, they don't want to make them mad. They want to do whatever they want to do, help them, do everything for them. They don't parent. They're just a friend. And there's no teaching that goes along with that. Part of your parental duties is teaching. That's the first step. We have a staircase next week that talks all about that. Okay. Proverbs 4:1, hear ye children the instruction of a father, and attend to know understanding. So the wise child listens to his father to learn. Mm-hmm. It's the rebels that discount whatever the father's saying. Most of it, there's so many kids nowadays that don't have a good father, or any father.
It takes too much time to actually be a good parent, Larry.
It's a lot of work.
And a lot of people don't have time. They would go right to the punishment, but don't talk to the child and use it as a teachable moment. I don't care what age they are.
Yeah.
They just do not take the time to really be a good parent.
Yeah, I think, when I was growing up, my mom was a teacher. She spent a lot of time working with me. But nowadays, the parents, like you said, they just don't want to take the time to do the work. Right. They just expect that the school will teach them what they need to know. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing now is that schools are teaching the kids what to think and not how to think. So it's not good. Let's see. Proverbs 5:7. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. Again, we're supposed to be teaching the children all about God and God's laws and commandments and principles And this is how to be a godly person. That's what we're supposed to be training these kids to do.
Well, we're not only supposed to be talking the talk, though, Larry, we're also supposed to be walking the walk.
Right.
I mean, you don't have two different faces, a church face and then a regular home face, and you just can't do that.
Yeah.
Kids are smart enough. They know what's going on.
Yeah, pretty smart these days.
They are.
They just don't know the right stuff. Proverbs 7:24 is pretty much the same as 5:7. Just listen and become wise. 8:32. Hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. So these three, 5:7, 7:24, and 8:32, are all very similar in that there's a blessing there when we listen and pay attention to God's word and then do those things. It's when we go against God, we're going to get in trouble. You know.
Well, it's also when you take the time to be a parent and ask the child, how was your day today? What was the highlight of your day? You know, what's going on with you? What the big things are coming up? If you don't know your kid, you know, that just makes them think the only way they can get your attention is by doing something bad, because at least you'll spend time with them, even if it's spanking them or mouthing off to them, well, this is why it's happening. This is why you're losing your phone. People just don't take the time to really parent.
Yeah. Well, we're in that second or third generation now where those children that are parents now weren't really, nobody spent time with them either. It's getting worse.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So can't you, I mean, it's not always the parents' fault either.
Well, no.
I mean, you know,
The kids make some
sometimes
choices.
You can reach out and a kid keeps rejecting you, and no matter what you do, if you correct them, then you're the bad guy,
Right.
you're the victim.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't say anything to them because anything you say is going to be used against you, then you're not talking to them, and it's like overwhelming. You're like, well, what should I do? I mean, how should I deal with this kid? You know, I mean, some kids are easier to deal with.
Oh, for sure.
But like the tools of the enemy.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're like really helpless. I guess it's the only place you can trust God on it.
Yeah, you have to see it that way, though. You have to see that they're being used as a tool.
Yeah, it's not the kid.
Right.
Not the enemy.
They're being used. They don't know what they're doing.
Right.
They're being deceived. They're blinded. They're being used as a tool. So the only thing you can really do is fight them in the spirit realm. Right? We don't fight against flesh and blood. We're fighting the dark side. Right? So when we see somebody that, I mean, you know, in our discernment through the Spirit, we can tell that somebody's being used as a tool. We come against the demon that's using the tool, not the tool. Right? So, yeah, it's not easy, but yeah.
As you were saying, kids today, and it just gets worse generation to generation. I think the reason there's that struggle, young children need to feel valued. Everybody needs to feel valued. So if we start that, as you were saying, when you get home, and you have to find a time. For me growing up, for my dad, it was at dinner time. Okay, how was your day today? He'd go down to tell what's going on, blah, blah, blah. You felt valued. You felt that he cared. And I know that today it's difficult because both parents work. But we have to find that time.
Right.
The older they get, if you come into a relationship and they're older, even the ones that are being used as a tool, there's always something that they're good at. And I know it's difficult, but we have to muster up that courage within us to say, okay, how's your drum lesson going today? Or how's that drum coming along? How is the music? Something that they are interested in. Then they know that you value something about them. And that grows so much confidence in them, and it just urges them to become better. And I know that because I worked with a lot of troubled children in the years. I used to volunteer, and I used to look for that one little thing, and that's how I would capture them, and then they themselves would come to you then with their issues and talk to you. But everybody needs to feel that we're all valuable. We all have intrinsic value, but they need to feel that. A lot of times they hide it because parents ignore them. They're like, you're nobody, you're nothing.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you ask them something, now they become valuable people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. And, you know, the way the culture is today, there's such a low value put on human life that, especially like in high school, you know, who's telling these kids that they're valuable? Mostly they've been told that they're not. You know, again, it goes back to the parents not really having a relationship with God. You know, that it's just, you know, whatever, yeah, go to school, learn whatever you got to learn, and then don't bother me, right? But, you know, like you said, when the parents, especially the father, like goes down the row and asks each kid, so what was good about your day? You know, that places a high value on them in that relationship department. So, you know, and like I said, you know, of course, I was an only kid. You had what, 5 or 6 siblings?
6 sisters.
You know, it was a lot easier for my mom and dad to spend time with me because I'm the only one that was there for almost 14 years. Then there was a sister. How'd that happen? But when I came into Carol's family, because, you know, there were 3 kids, I'm the new guy, I felt it was my job to find a way to relate to them, the kids, in something that they liked. You know, what were they interested in that I had some ability to be interested in? For the older daughter, there wasn't a whole lot. But the son, he liked sports, he liked music. I had been attempting to learn how to play a guitar, so we had that in common. You know, we could hang out at the music store, throw a ball, or shoot some hoops, or do something like that. So I had that to be able to relate to him. And then the 4-year-old, that was pretty easy. You know, just had to be there. But
well, one of the things I found, Larry, with my dad, because he did it at the dinner table, I had my 3 older sisters, and there was 10 years in me. The younger ones weren't there, but what it taught the older ones were to value me as well.
Right.
Hi, sissy, how was your day today? You know, so they become friendly because my dad taught them that, brought that out of them, and then helped me with the younger ones. So even though there's a age gap, you still learn. It becomes part of you the more we do it, and it helps the other siblings because some of them can be pretty tough, you know, good to the younger ones. It takes time, but it works.
No, especially when there is a big age gap. You know, there's. My sister was born in February. That following May, I turned 14. So it's only like 3 months of not being 14 years difference. And so I was basically a built-in babysitter, right? So I had all that time to like change diapers and, you know, feed her and do this and that. So when Carol and I got married, she wasn't able to have kids, and I'm like, oh, okay. I had my diaper changing time and all that kind of stuff. I'm good. But there was a 4-year-old, which was all, you know, it's like just past all that, right? She could take care of herself pretty much, but was, you know, fun to be around and do stuff. But yeah, it's when you're not teaching the kids, you know, how to treat other people, which is a big part of teaching them to value themselves as well as other people, respect your elders, you know, all that kind of stuff, which was always a big deal back in my day. If somebody was older than you, you respected them just because they were older.
And kind of going back to, you know, the statement there, you know, I come from a blended family, you know, myself and my kids grew up in a blended family. And kids do go through a season where they have a hard time connecting. A lot of times kids are acting out of their pain. And so you do have to pray for them. You do have to cover them. I know my daughter, I guess, from 18 to 30, you know, just really antagonistic toward me and those kinds of things. But putting them in God's hands and letting God heal them where they need that healing, because we don't know. I didn't know, but the Holy Spirit knows exactly what's going on.
Right.
Pastor Carissa would tell a story about her sister that had been out there for years on drugs and stuff, and then one day she came and just confessed all of her sins to her mother, and from that point she got to be set free. She had ended up having a child in between. So God is faithful. If we just put our trust in Him, He can turn these situations around for our children, because He does love them. He loves us. And He needs us as parents to pray for our kids. That's part of that stewardship that we're called to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the stewardship, right? Having faith, believing that God is the one who's going to do the changing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And as you were describing what was going on there, when someone confesses, and the Scripture says, when you confess one to another, you shall be healed.
Amen.
It's part of that spiritual warfare thing is when you try to keep something inside you, you don't want anybody to know, that's where the enemy works. Right? You keep trying to hide it. But once it's exposed, it's like the sunlight that cleans. You hang your laundry out. There's just something about the way sheets smell when they've been hanging out on the line for a day. That sunlight kills germs.
Yes.
And it kills diseases and stuff. So.
Well, another thing we suggest when there is a new blended family is to do things once a week as a family, no matter what the age is. And I know the older ones are going to say, "Oh God, are you kidding me? A family dinner or family night? Oh yeah, right." But you know what? After a while, they really like it. They get to look forward to it. And if you say, because that's what we teach. And when we've been counseling, that's what we teach. And we've had many people say, well, the older ones really didn't like it. But then one week we got real busy and we forgot to say what we were going to do for family night. And they asked us. The two older ones came to us, well, aren't we going to have family night? So, it's you and your spouse have to be in agreement on that, whatever you decide to do. But if it's maybe a movie night once a week, you rent a red box movie, or you play games one night, and you decide what game you're going to play as a family. Or you decide to have a meal together one night and decide as a family what type of a meal, either just pizza or Italian or Mexican or just a plain potluck, whatever. And even the young ones, as young as they are, if they can walk, they can put the napkins on the corner of the table or whatever, have everybody take part in it. So everybody has a part of it to do something as a family. And those kids love direction. They love knowing they belong and they're part of something. And we also suggest for the younger ones, especially under 12, get a calendar. And the dollar store has beautiful calendars for $1 and little stickers. And have them be in charge of a few things. Okay, it's your job at night before you go to bed to pick up your toys on the floor. Put them in this basket or whatever. And you'll get a star tomorrow, or you'll get a star once a week. Let them belong. Let them know there's some things that they need to do and are expected to do as part of the family. It just works better that way.
Yeah, and that's one good thing about chores is it gives them a sense of being part of something.
Right.
That I'm needed to do this job. And those kind of things. So it's a good thing.
And we have people all the time, well, I'm not going to ask my 10-year-old to dump the trash. Why should he have to do that? Well, why not?
Because he's
10 years old. Why not? At 8 years old, Michelle, our youngest, used to change clothes 5 times a day. And I took her little body right out to the laundry room and I said, okay, Michelle, you can change 5 times a day. That's fine. But this is what you're going to do. And showed her how to, separate the colors. This is the laundry soap. This is the washer. This is the dryer. And when her room got piles and piles, I know I wanted to go in there and you said, no, Carol, no. Instead, Larry got me to shut the door, so I didn't see those piles. And eventually she figured out, oh my gosh, I'm out of clothes. I gotta do laundry.
Yep. Okay, so we've talked about the blessings that God bestowed on us by having kids, and it's a blessing to be a parent. We talked about some of the scriptures that deal with our duties as parents. And the other category here is the legacy, what the benefits are of being a good parent down the road. One of those things, Matthew 25:21, it says, His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I'll make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. So that's that's something I always kind of wanted to hear was, well done, good and faithful servant. That's a good thing. So that's a really big part of the legacy, is that you will be considered a good and faithful servant. Proverbs. The rest of these are all Proverbs. 27, a just man walks in his integrity, and his children are blessed after him. So we kind of mentioned something like that before, but as you have done a good job of being a parent, and then you become a grandparent, that godly influence that you had on your kid will rub off on their kids, and so your grandkids will be, maybe not pillars of society, but at least they won't be in jail, right? Something like that. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. So, we're supposed to leave a little something behind for the grandkids. It doesn't say for the kids, it says for the grandkids. Now, I think partly because you see, it tends to be the grandkids that they don't know what it took to create the wealth that was created. So you got to make sure that they're godly as the generations go, because when they're not really godly, then the tendency is for the grandkids to just blow the money, because they have no idea how it came. It's just here, right? They don't get what happened, what the work was, the sacrifices that were made, and all that kind of stuff. But it is a good thing to leave something for the grandkids.
Oh, and I love giving advice for the grandkids. That's when my girls would call and tell me what's going on with the grandkids. And I get to say this word, paybacks.
That's terrible.
And both my daughters said, I never did that. I never did that.
Oh yeah, remember
I love
that time?
Word.
Right.
That sounds familiar.
31:28, Proverbs 31, all about a godly wife. It says, her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. So the godly wife, the godly mom, is blessed because her children love her, and so does her husband. And she is, one of the other lessons we talked about how man was to be the image and glory of God, and the woman was to be the glory of the man. So when a woman is a godly woman, she is a crown in the husband's, a jewel in the husband's crown, right? 10:1, the Proverbs of Solomon, a wise son makes a glad father. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yep. Dad's proud of the son, right, when he's doing good. But a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. Dad's real proud of the kid that does well. Mom is wearing her heart on her sleeve because the kid is a mess. All right. Doesn't say what the dad's doing there. He's like, oh well. Yeah. You made your bed. Right? You made your bed, you sleep in it. Let's see, 10:7. The memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. There was a study done many years ago about one particular family, and 2 or 3 generations, well, maybe 3 or 4 generations of this one particular family, and many of them were like doctors and lawyers, and I think there was a senator or 2 in there, very prominent people in the society, very giving public servants and all that. And the other family, they were mostly prostitutes and drunks and thieves, and so the good family had like 300 people in it. I mean, so all those extra people were a blessing, right? Well, the other one only had maybe 100 or so, and many of them ended up in jail, died early from gunfights and drugs and all that kind of stuff. So the memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. And sooner or later, that wicked name will just sort of disappear. There won't be any more generations of that. But the good one, that one will keep going. And finally, 3:35. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. So that's kind of the same as 10:7. The wise who use the wisdom of God to live their lives shall be glorified, and shame will follow the foolish. Everybody will see them as a fool. Their legacy will be, oh, that guy was a fool. All right? So that's blessings, parental duties, and the legacy, all the different scriptures there. Too many of them to write them all out, so I just wrote the scriptures. Y'all can look them up, right? Okay. Now we talked a little bit about this already. Children are to become adults. That's your job, is to create an independent, self-sufficient adult by raising your kids up in the way they should go, right? Now, when that happens, we talked about the stewardship period, 18 to 25, you give them back to God and all that. So at some point, that relationship has to change from parent, child, to adult and adult. Now you're just adults. Yeah, you're the parent, but you're just 2 adults now. You're not trying to tell them how to live their life all the time. You're not in their face. You're, here's some advice. Take it or leave it, but you have to live with whatever you decide, right? At some point, they have to be responsible for their own decisions and be accountable to God. That's our job. That's what giving them back means. They are old enough, they have learned enough, they should be wise enough to make decent decisions. But they have to learn there are consequences to those decisions. And so you can't prevent them from falling. If all you do is catch them, then all they learn is you'll catch them. They never experience the pain of hitting the ground, right? And that's the real thing. God wants us to be, well, Pastor Leo had is God in your marriage? One of the first sentences in the book was, God didn't create marriage to make you happy.
Thank you all for joining the Blended Families Ministry program today. This ministry was created to help blended families learn how to use biblical tools that will help you thrive. We are Doctors Larry and Carol Snap, and we invite you to listen to our weekly shows here on ChristianLivingRadio.com and to visit our website, blendedfamiliesministry.org, to learn more about the ministry and all that we do. Thank you, and God bless.
Christian living, Christian living. Christian Living Radio. It's a lifestyle. Christian living, Christian living. Christian Living Radio. It's a life.
Christian Living Radio, spreading the good news of Jesus Christ 24/7. Our goal is to bring you a life-changing word through music and diverse programming, like the one you're listening to now. Pastor Kenyatta Goins is the visionary of Christian Living Radio. And he's dedicated to the idea that Christians should even have a more prominent presence in the marketplaces. Maybe you need prayer for yourself and or your family. Maybe for a friend. We'd be privileged to stand in the gap for you. If you're listening to this broadcast, click on the Contact Us tab and send us your prayer request. We'd also like to hear from you if you have something on your mind or just give us some feedback. We support many ministries, so maybe you'd like to make a one-time or a monthly recurring donation. We believe that when you sow into these ministries, you'll indeed be blessed. And of course, if you sow into this show in particular, we believe that it's a blessing for you, so please consider sponsoring us. There's a special area under the Donate tab where you can send your monetary gift or call 520-812-6363. That's 520-812-6363 to receive more information about sponsorship. Thank you.
Join the best positive Christian lifestyle movement on the air at ChristianLivingRadio.com.
As a small business owner, you're reimagining the way you work. From rethinking your bandwidth to reassessing your voice solutions, you're changing the way you do business. And at Cox Business, so are we. Our flexible internet and voice packages give you the solutions you need to get back to business. Rethink, reconnect, reimagine. Get 50 megs of internet and IPC Select for only $89 per month for 6 months. No annual contract required. Ends 9/30/20. Restrictions apply. Visit coxbusiness.com for details. All services subject to Cox Business general terms. As a small business owner, you're redefining business as usual. From rethinking the way you work to reassessing your bandwidth, you're changing the way you do business. And at Cox Business, so are we. With flexible internet packages to get you back to business. Rethink, reconnect, reimagine. Get 50 megs of internet for only $70 per month for 6 months. No annual contract required. Ends 9/30/20. Restrictions apply. Visit coxbusiness.com for details. All services subject to Cox Business general terms.